Hello and welcome to the Mariana Dalto Show, the podcast where small business owners share their stories, insights, and strategies for success. I'm your host, Mariana Dalto, and our guest today is Dez Maya. Dez is a performance improvement consultant and professional coach. She's the founder of Born Unbreakable and the host of the Born Unbreakable podcast. She loves help others crush their self-limiting beliefs, facing fear, and finding joy, among any other things that she helps people with. So welcome this to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You are welcome. We're excited to have you. So Des, let's start first. Tell us about your journey and what inspired you to create your coaching business and start, decided to become a business owner.
Yeah, that's a great starting point. So, I actually started in consulting in the healthcare industry almost 20 years ago. And so, naturally, through that avenue, I had to do performance coaching as a part of my job. A lot of that, though, was around asking people what they wanted to do with their careers. And it was much more focused on a professional level. But what started to happen was you can't really decouple your personal life and your professional life, although I think many of us strive to do that to be able to accomplish certain things. I think the pandemic sort of proved to us that everything is just meshed and it's all a balancing act. So I recognize that coaching a whole person is where I really found my joy. Coaching the pieces that hold them back, which oftentimes come from not just the workplace, but a lot of things that people are experiencing in their personal life. So once I tapped into that desire, that joy, that excitement, I decided to get certified as a coach independently and start my own business. And so that was back in 2017.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So then when you started your business, what challenges did you face and how did you overcome some of them? And I know everyone goes through challenges because when even though you have some background, professional background, it's always like, okay, how do I start this journey? And so what were the first steps that you were like, oh my gosh, facing against the wall, and then you ended up like overcoming those?
Yeah, I think one of the first things was when you work for a business, your clients are given to you, and so to speak. There's a whole network and an infrastructure that feeds into giving you work. Whereas when you start your own business, it's feast or famine based on the work effort you put in on your own. So how do you find clients? And why should they trust you? Right, so those were two things. One, even if you have the confidence to say, let me reach out to people I know, um well, then how am I going to convince people that I'm somebody that they should work with? So those were two immediate ones that I had to face. One is like, I'm so excited, wait a minute, how do I get clients?
And then how did you ended up working out for you? What did you ended up doing? And what was your strategy to really being successful and reaching out to people?
Keeping it simple. That was my strategy, keeping it simple. And what I mean by that is I know people that do trust me, that have known me. The fortune was that I've already been in the business. I was just doing it in a particular setting. In
Mhm.
healthcare, I had the credibility, I had the credentials. And so for me, it was go to people you trust and have them understand what you're doing, how you're expanding. And then, do you know anybody? And so my business is predominantly referrals. I don't do tons of ads. There's, I think now with social media, that's a beautiful place to tap into. But so that really was the initial thing, is going to people that trust you and getting their feedback and tapping into their networks, because inevitably it's the power of numbers. You do that enough times and then it will come into fruition. That one person turns into two. And then you have to ask yourself, well, is there a threshold? How many clients do I want? Is there a point when I feel like it's too much, either for my own personal balance, or am I feeling like I'm giving the right energy to the business if I'm overwhelmed? So, but that's where it started. was my
Yeah, and you typically like coach around that too. So it's kind of like you're coaching yourself or like,
yeah.
am I approaching this the right way?
Exactly. So oftentimes what's fascinating about the business that I'm in with coaching is you're constantly your own student.
Hmm.
You know, you have to behave in a way that you would tell someone else to do. You wouldn't want incongruency advising somebody to behave and conduct things and do behaviors that you would not practice yourself. There has to be
Absolutely.
synergy,
Yeah,
consistency, congruency.
that's great. So now then, okay, so you launched your business and then you started having clients. And then what was the most common challenges you've seen in those clients and how did you help them? What were the
Yeah,
top, the themes that was coming up?
right. So one of the biggest things for well, so my practice is coaching on self-limiting beliefs. So the things that hold you back from being your best self, whether it's in your relationships and business. Uh, and the biggest challenge that I found that people had is fear. Is fear of the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen. And you go down what I call the rabbit hole of what ifs, which is what if it doesn't work out? What if I fail? What if people judge me? That was probably one of the biggest ones that would be most consistent with people is judgment. There is a propensity of people caring, whether it's outright caring or we ask more questions. I ask more questions and discover that they actually care how they're perceived. So, what are people going to think if I make this change? What are people going to think if I leave this relationship? I'm going to be judged. And with social media, it's exacerbated. Before, it was just, your four closest friends, maybe your parents, and, if you have kids or something. Now it's your network on Instagram and Facebook and whatever other, media channels that you have. If you're anybody that has an audience that you value their perspective, all of those factors would come together. But it was the fear of all of those things that hold so many of the people that I coach back.
Hmm. So do you believe that fear is necessary for growth? And if so, how will you reframe that if
Yeah.
that's necessary, right?
Yeah. I think that fear is normal. I think it is an inevitable aspect of growth, So, I mean, another way to say that could be that it's necessary. I think it's just you can't avoid it. So I think reframing it is staying on that what if channel, right? That rabbit hole is what if it goes well beyond your wildest imagination? What if you learn something you never thought you would? What if you meet people that you otherwise wouldn't have met if you didn't make this decision? What if you free up your time with things that you enjoy rather than things that suck the life out of you? So, reframing is just looking at the possible instead of already making the possible impossible.
Yeah, even going back to what was the main reason why you decided to do what you decided to do, and go back to that passion and that main reason why you wanted to do it in the first place,
Mhm. 'Cause
right?
oftentimes what happens is people go through a cycle of they get exhausted by their own fears that are not even existing yet. They're just potential things that could happen, and they've already talked themselves out of something. So they're right back in the same place. But then the question is, what is it that you really want? Maybe you don't want it bad. Maybe this relationship is fine for you. Maybe this job is serving you, but if you continue to come back to the same question and there's this burning feeling inside that's eating away at you, that's telling you you want to try something different, you want a healthier situation, or even with body, especially like I coach a higher percentage of women, and their body image is something that comes up too, of just like health. And being worried about, again, what people think. It's like, what if you were the best version of you, and they can't envision the next chapter of what they look like. But if you can picture, what would it feel like if
Mhm.
you did this? So a lot of the activities that I end up doing with people are around visioning
Mm.
and around owning the potential and turning that potential into reality, is closing the gap, right? And the ultimate key for me is action.
Oh,
What is the
absolutely.
recipe for fear? Action. And it's not, I think the mistake that's often made is people think that action has to be so grand. Oh, I have to invest this much money that I don't have in this business that is a dream of mine. I have to just cut cold turkey all the foods that I love today, or I have to just have one conversation and break up with this person. Action is about taking incremental steps that can be small to ultimately get to the destination or the next step in your journey that you want to take. So action doesn't always have to be, something that is billboard worthy. It could just be these small steps that are proving to yourself that it's possible.
Yeah,
Is
and
that
that journey of taking action helps them to be more confident and have less fear and start thinking differently. But yeah, very little steps will help them, feel better and start shifting their mindset to a better you or a better them, right?
yeah, absolutely.
So
It's
if you
fascinating.
go back to the self-limiting beliefs, do you have a story about you where you maybe were in that situation where you had to overcome your own self-limiting beliefs? Because I'm sure maybe there's some nugget there that you might have as a personal story that would like to share with the audience.
Oh my gosh. It's like pick your day. No.
Yeah, it,
You know?
it is true. Every day is probably a new.
No, I think I've had it in business certainly, but I'd love for your audience to be able to relate to something that, maybe is somewhat ubiquitous. I think for many of us, if you have a little bit of tread on your tires in the world, which is heartbreak. So for me, when I went through divorce for the first time when I was 25 years old, so I was also really young when this was happening. I was in a relationship at a young age because I met my ex-husband at the time when I was a teenager. So it was very much a high school kind of love story. Didn't, divorce wasn't something that was in my mind. You're with the person you love and it's forever and you make a beautiful life. And so at the time when that happened, which was 10 years later after we got together to when I was divorced, because like I said, I was a teenager, my self-limiting belief was part of working through what I think I developed of a little bit of a codependency. Like I couldn't be the best version of myself without being attached to somebody that I had designed a life with at such a young age. So that time for me was about rebirth, reinvigoration, and reimagining what life could be like for me as a single person, as a person that needed to tap into my own identity again, when I had to say, what do I even like doing? What do I enjoy? What makes me have excitement to wake up and go be adventurous? There's so many pieces of me. I struggle to use the word die because it sounds, so morbid or something, but they they were dormant.
Mm.
Let's say they
Yeah.
were dormant. They were there still, but I'd like to use the word reinvigorate because I needed to find the spark again. So that limiting belief for me was I capable? Was I capable of giving things a second go and becoming a person that could move confidently in the world without a partner that I was linked to for such a long time?
Yeah. And this kind of might tie a little bit on what you talk about joy, right? Like how people can find joy. And sometimes I see business owners, this is how they start, and then they start losing their joy because it's like so much that they need to get done. And I'm like, I'm not really happy anymore. This is what is happening. So would you have any advice for someone who's looking to find the joy again while they're, trying to pursue their goals in their business?
Absolutely. You know, find joy in the little things. Find joy in the moments and not the mountains. So what I mean by that is it's sometimes it's the process, right? Like in the beginning of the business, I remember when it was like, I need a logo, I need a website, I need a tagline, I need a brand strategist. And I did all those things. I hired a brand strategist, and I'm not suggesting to people you have to do all these things, but part of it is the excitement of the process. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I get to pick my colors for my, business. I need to sit down and decide, like, who do I want to be? If people hear my name or they hear my business name, what do I want them to feel? And so, but you know, if you zoom past these moments, because these moments become memories, right? Like I could talk about it years later and go, oh my gosh, I remember it was 3 a.m. and I had like 49 names on a list. And the name that I ended up choosing was the 48th. I mean, it's fun. And so if you don't enjoy the process of all the little things to get you to the big thing, of course it's going to be exhausting. Of course, it's going to be like, why did I even do this in the first place? Because most business owners, the first 2 to 3 years, you're not at a profit. I mean, unless you're doing a certain thing like like a certain very low risk thing, you're investing in your business at first. So you're in the red, you're trying to get to the black, and then you get into the green. But unless you have maybe an investor or something, it's going to take a little bit of time. So you have to appreciate the process, or all you're going to do is focus on the problems.
Yeah, and even like, I mean, I'm a coach and you're a coach, and sometimes people underestimate the effort it takes to launch a business, to do the work that needs to get done, and that's where the joy goes down because it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know it was gonna take so much work to do this. At the end of the day, it's amazing because that's what you wanted to do, but it takes effort and it takes persistence and it takes like,
Yeah,
a
it's
lot
a
of mindset, right? The right
short.
mindset.
Yeah, every day, and like two things I would say about, because people often ask the question, well, what does it take to be successful? What does it take to, persevere? Um, it's interesting because I think, what is your definition of success?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is success $1 billion? Is success balance, where
Mm-hmm.
you have enough to do something you enjoy, like travel, but you're not burnt out, getting only 2 hours of sleep? Like, we have to frame that for what it is to us personally. But the ingredients that I think are part of that recipe is discipline and consistency.
Oh, 100%.
Consistency. So discipline is doing the things you don't want to do and doing them anyways. You know,
Mm-hmm.
consistency is doing it every day,
Yeah, that's how you
occasionally.
grow. That's how you get better. And even like, yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. It's just like the consistency, doing the stuff, and you'll get there, right? But people, fear so many things in the beginning, or they don't really know how long it's gonna take to get, what they need to get. And even the success piece, today success is one thing for you. A year from now, it will totally change. 6 months from now will totally change because when you start taking action, you realize, oh my gosh, this is not the success that I was looking for, or I want more, I want something different. So success will also change. Do you agree with that?
I 1,000% agree with that. And that's why I think you have to ask yourself that question regularly. Ask yourself every 6 months. And if you have a process, or if you don't have a process, maybe start there. If you have an annual process, like right now, we only have a couple months left in the year. And so maybe part of it is making it your ritual as you look towards the year ahead and you're thinking 2025, what do I want? Ask yourself, what is it that you value and what is the outcome that you want? So because it's like I said, it's different for everyone. At one point when I started, it was the financial aspect. Money, because for me personally, it was about leverage. Honestly, it was leverage, but the way that I could get there would be with money. So money was the tool, it was the vehicle to provide me with leverage to do more things. When you achieve a goal, then it becomes, well, I want my time back. Or, I want, now my thing is peace is the new prophecy. I want peace. I do want days where I could sit there and if I felt like binge watching something, I wouldn't feel guilty for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that is only once a week and it's not like 3 times a week, but I still want the permission for myself to do that. So, what's it going to take for me to do that? What's it going to take for me to unplug for a day and feel totally fine with that? But so for me right now, it's peace and balance, but in a different era, it was something else. So, if you don't interrogate that for yourself, on a regular basis, then you might be chasing something that's old, you
Yeah.
know?
And even like, I mean, I think everyone who decided to become a solopreneur or business owner, one of the main drivers is freedom, right? And that's where you're like, okay, I want the freedom. But then when you start a business, you get so busy, the freedom disappears. And then, because you're like, oh, wait, I decided to have freedom, but then where did it go? And then it's
Yeah.
interesting that you say, yeah, maybe I'll pick one day where I watch a show or do this, but and then so I can pick some freedom, but you still need to work on your business in order to be successful.
Right, right, and like very, very successful people who have been disciplined and consistent, get to work on their business instead of in their business over the course of time. But another thing I would say, if anybody's listening, wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey, I would say evaluate the people that are around you because that's part of the recipe too for your sanity, your peace, your joy, your laughter, and lifting you up on the days when you want to quit and you're like, I'm done. I've had it. I'm exhausted. You want people around you. I have a philosophy. I write about this in my book, and it's called Savers. You want people that support you, are aligned with you, value add to your life, elevate you. And this is hard, but rise with you. See, there's a different level of momentum that you get when you're around people who want to go forward too. And I mean
Hmm.
that in a lot of different ways. It doesn't just have to mean sometimes we talk on business podcasts and people assume that everything is always monetary or financial.
Hmm.
So when I say rise with you, I mean mentally. I mean people that want to also take care of their body, mind, and spirit, and it's hard to find this. And so it's not about finding the many, it's about finding the few that can meet that criteria. So even in it's great during the best of times, but even in the worst of times, you've got that the right recipe of people around you.
Yeah, that's key. And that always changes too when you're growing and you get a new community, a new people, a new group of people around you. And that's where sometimes there's also fear around it, like, oh, I'm going to lose these friends that I have forever, but they just maybe now not, they might not resonate with your new life anymore, right? So that
It's
happens a lot
like
too.
It's like a theater, and not everybody needs to be in the front row. Sometimes you need to just switch seats, and maybe someone needs to sit in the balcony for a minute, or maybe the back row. Doesn't mean that you're kicking them out of your life, but you're creating boundaries and you're placing people because it's your life. You're the CEO of your own life. You get to decide if there's only so many tickets in the front row to give out, right? So choose wisely and it will change. And the other piece that I would say is, there's always people you can learn from, and there's always people that can learn from you.
Oh, yeah.
Evaluate that carefully, because if you're in a season of your life where you are only the teacher, which feels really good, right? Like if you're somebody that people are coming to for advice, it's awesome. But if you don't have somebody to ask advice from, that's a problem if you're a business
Yes.
person.
You gotta grow. You gotta keep learning regardless that you gotta keep yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know that we're almost done at the end of the show, but I really wanted to ask you, looking back, what would you have done differently in your business journey that maybe can, spark some ideas for people who are, maybe in the early stages of their business? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a great advice.
Yeah. I would have been more vulnerable and gotten feedback. And what that would have looked like is I suffer from perfectionist disease. So I've had to read lots of books and listen to podcasts to work on that problem. But having that issue meant that I didn't I always wanted to be right, and I always wanted things to be perfect. So what happens though is vulnerability suffers because you don't want to hear something negative that someone has to say, or constructive. Maybe constructive is a better word. So as you're building your business, if every 90 days you're getting feedback from people, whether it's formal, like a survey that you can have data and look at some trends and things, or it's informal, where you just, go to different groups that may be touched by your stuff and ask, what about this is resonating with you? What is there something I could do differently? People will be honest with you. I mean, especially if you're asking people that care about you in some type of way, they'll say, hey, you might think about this. It doesn't mean you have to take the feedback. Remember that, right? It's when I've had to build tougher skin because I don't think I was one of those people that was just born with it. I had to build it, through the years. So you're going to have the ability when you get feedback to, okay, take it in and then look at the themes. So there's might be one random thing that someone says that's just not really not meaningful. But if there's, a fair amount of people are saying something, there could be something to that. So I wish that I had done a little bit more of that and was vulnerable and not, suffered from this perfectionism thing, because I think it would have served me through the years.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. And I think my advice would be for people, be coachable, right? And which is exactly what you say, like listen what the feedback that you're getting, and don't be defensive, be coachable and understand it and figure out why people are reacting that way, because you might not see it, because who knows? But then if there's a trend, there's something there that you might need to improve or shift the way you're approaching things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for all the coaching, the insights, the advice. Before we wrap up, could you please share with our listeners how they can learn more about you, the programs that you offer, everything that could help them, connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Bornunbreakable.com is the best way to reach me. It has all the links to my socials, all my social medias like Instagram. I try to keep everything very consistent. So pretty much if you look up Born Unbreakable, you'll find all the handles. That's where you could buy my book to support me. And that's where what I'm most excited about, because I do love meeting new people and I love the opportunity to connect with audiences like yours that really are in a place where they might be trying to work to build themselves in their entrepreneurship. Is a free consultation. So I do have that on my website as well. If you go to the coaching section, you can book that with me, and I would love to. And even if it is just for that time, if it's not about having to do more work with me, but if there's something you get value out of a conversation that's one-on-one like this, I would love to do that for you.
I encourage the audience to do that, to follow that and take advantage of that offer, because believe it or not, it can really open up new ideas and a new way of approaching your business. So go ahead and schedule that consultation call with us. It's for sure open up goodness in you and in your business.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dez, for joining us today. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed this episode. And I will add all Dez resources and links in the show notes if you want to get them from there, so you can connect with her. Thank you, Dez, so much.
So much.
See you next time.